Hello, a very warm welcome to all the participants in this very important training session. As you all know, the International Labour Conference, which brings together governments, employers and workers of the 187 member states of the ILO, discussed the topic of decent work in global supply chains during its June 2016 session. The conclusions of this tripartite discussion provide a framework with a clear mandate for action for the ILO, the governments, the social partners and business. An action plan adopted by the ILO governing body has set out the roadmap for implementing the ILC conclusions, and this after several discussions that took place in the governing body. Following the conclusions of the conference and based on the consensus reached by the social partners, the ILO has to show global leadership and increase the leverage to address challenges and opportunities in global supply chains. Let's just look quickly at which are these main challenges. Reduce the decent work deficits in global supply chains, in particular the violation of workers' rights. Reduce inequalities with the development of labor relations systems that are based on collective bargaining, but also on the mutual development of global framework agreements and of collective bargaining agreements at the national, sectoral and enterprise level. Thirdly, recognize the role of EPZs in global supply chains and increase the work of the ILO and constituents to reduce decent work deficits in these zones. So the program's architecture has 5 areas of action and will aim to become a leader in the global effort to advance decent work in global supply chains, as well as a knowledge and resource facility for social partners, governments and institutions who seek to engage meaningfully in this work. Let's look quickly at the action areas. Action Area 1 on knowledge generation and dissemination. And here, the Office will consolidate and further develop a strong knowledge base to help constituents to shape effective policies for achieving decent work. Specific sectors will be selected with the support of the constituents. On Action Area 2, we will concentrate on capacity building. The Office will deliver targeted services to governments in order to strengthen their institutional capacity to enforce compliance with national labor laws, but also with international labor standards, to enterprises to help them develop greater capacity to create and maintain decent working conditions, and also to both social partners to engage in effective industrial relations and social dialogue, once again to advance decent work and to reduce decent work deficits. On Action Area 3, we will work on the effective advocacy for decent work in global supply chains. And here, the Office will work with the tripartite constituents to take the lead in advocating for decent work in supply chains at the national, sectoral, regional and international levels, and focusing on ratification and implementation of freedom of association and collective bargaining conventions, but also on other key international labor standards. Action Area 4 will concentrate on policy advice and technical assistance. And here, the Office will assist Member States to develop and to implement a targeted mix of policies for reducing decent work deficits at country level. And major technical cooperation programs will also operate here, like for instance the 5 ILO flagships. On Action Area 5, it's on partnerships and policy coherence. The Office will intensify its work with United Nations agencies, with the multilateral institutions, but also with other international forums and global supply chain actors, this in the context of the 2030 Agenda, again to develop and to promote coherent policies that advance decent work in global supply chains. This action plan will also contribute to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals particularly to Goal 8 to promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. Also, the ILO Centenary Initiative on the Future of Work will include a strategic dialogue of the new forms of the organization of work and production linked with the increasingly globalized economy, technological advances and competition. The global supply chains, the gig economy, massive crowdsourcing, crowd work and mobile work are all processes that are considerably changing the traditional paradigm of company as a producer of goods and services through stable and direct employment labor. These forms of work have a tendency to lead to precarious working conditions, to informality, and even to convert relations with serious consequences for promoting decent work and social justice. So, dear friends, ACTRAV is actively involved and embedded in these activities and operations, and we facilitate the involvement of workers' organizations in the ILO Action Plan on Global Supply Chains. The action plan will also play a role in introducing new approaches to realize decent work in global supply chains and to ensure that the needs of workers and companies are met and that workers' rights are embedded into the rules, laws and relationships that drive global supply chains as the main element of the global economy. Again, the action plan will also help generating an interactive dialogue on the role played by the ILO and its member states in promoting leadership, but also in ensuring that leverage is exercised for the protection and respect of labor rights. The 5-year program starts this year in 2017 and will continue through the next 2 biennia, 2018-19 and 2020-2021. So, in conclusion, the debate that took place in the International Labour Conference recognizes the contribution of global supply chains to economic development, to job creation, to technology transfers, but also at the same time recognized the failure to achieve decent work by increasing decent work deficits. And this is linked to the failure to implement ILO conventions, in particular the enabling rights. It's linked to low wages and it's linked to increased inequalities. We need a greater focus, and we need that greater focus to make progress on labor rights, wages and working conditions, to assess and reduce decent work deficits, to increase governance within countries, and also to increase governance across borders due to the nature of global supply chains themselves. We also have 2 specific challenges in the area of industrial relations, because global supply chains pinpoint to the importance of cross-border social dialogue, but also in improving working conditions and labor rights in EPZs. So, dear friends, this training program has been designed to respond to these 2 specific challenges. EPZs and cross-border social dialogue that will be discussed in 2 meetings of experts. The first one on EPZs on 2017, this year, and the second one on cross-border on social dialogue in 2018. And these 2 expert meetings will support the ILO Plan of Action, and they will guide the work of the office and of the constituents. So this program is aimed at deepening your knowledge and our knowledge and at sharing the union work in order to be ready for these new challenges and also for making a change, a real change in the EPZs and in cross-border social dialogue. Last thing I want to say, to wish you a very good and fruitful work alongside what you're going to do in the course of this week. Thank you very much.